with the first pick.
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. Check out the Stadium Rant YouTube channel for league-wide original shows and more. We got tons of great social media content on all platforms, so make sure to give us a look and follow if you like us. All right, so today we are going to be covering, how could I forget my crew here? I'm Dan Baker, joined by Mason Beck, Evan Gooding, and Lee Cook. We are going to be talking about the fantasy impact that the rookie wide receivers and tight ends will have in the league, as well as on their teammates. See who the biggest winners and losers are, and who's going to be, primed for year one, who might take a little bit more time before they pop. All right. So to start, though, quick news: we got Tyler Boyd signed a 1-year deal up to $4.5 million with the Titans. Treylon Burks seems like the most evident loser in this situation, being the wide receiver 3 already. And then, Lee, before the show, you brought up a good point that he's rejoining his old OC from the Bengals as the head coach in Tennessee. So already a familiarity there. What is the highest rookie pick you would be willing to trade for Treylon Burks in a Dynasty Superflex?
The highest or the lowest? The highest rookie pick? I'd probably pay. I want to say late second, just because I feel like the talent is still there, but I don't know. It's so risky. And I'd rather risk it on a pick, honestly. But I'm holding Treylon Burks too. I wouldn't sell him for a third.
Yeah, at the end of the second right now, I have Devontae Walker, Troy Franklin, Jermaine Burton, and then to begin the third, Javon Baker, Roman Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd. I wouldn't trade any of those guys for Treylon Burks right now. I'm looking more towards the back of the third, front of the fourth, probably the front of the fourth, because I got Ray Davis 312, and I wouldn't trade Ray Davis for him. So 401's where I'm sitting. Mason, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking late fourth. I would honestly rather draft like Brendan Rice in the fourth than take the shot with Treylon. They brought in Calvin Ridley this offseason. I mean, D-Hop, I believe, is only there for one more season on contract. And then Tyler Boyd was only one season as well, but that would put Treylon into his fourth season, I believe, which, at that point, if you haven't really proven yourself, you're kind of finding your way out of the league. I don't really see Treylon Burks proving anything to, maybe even keep a roster spot if after like week 6, if he's not doing anything, I might just be dropping Treylon Burks at this point. It's not looking good for him. He really hasn't shown much at all. And then the injury concerns also is just, it's how your career ends at a very young age.
Yeah. Lee?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's been some flashes, especially his rookie season, outside the injuries. I think he showed flashes of being an NFL receiver. I would probably go with a late third, kind of depending on, obviously, on needs and whatnot. But we've talked in private. I don't have a lot of value for those late thirds. This guy's, first-round pedigree. We all know, they essentially traded A.J. Brown for him. That looks worse by the day, especially being they didn't want to pay A.J. and turn around and gave Calvin Ridley, comparable money. But especially with Hopkins being the age he is and likely done after this season, and Boyd being on a 1-year deal, he's not going to get the target share this season, but all he's got to do is show some flashes, and I think he'll really have an opportunity next year. And next year is going to be, are they going to pick up an option? Is he going to get another contract somewhere else? We know how sometimes guys, really break out, that contract year. So I have some high hopes, more so for 25 than 24.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally
Fair
agree.
enough.
Especially if he gets moved. Like, I mean, they're not adding these people. I feel like one of these guys is going to move, and not going to be Ridley, not going to be Boyd. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes. I do think that there's some promising behind-the-scene metrics for like the yards per route run when he is on the field, but like we touched on, the injury scares are real. He hasn't seen a lot of time on the field, and by this time, a first-round draft pick, either shows it or usually is gone. And maybe he gets a second chance in the right opportunity. But let's move on to our next question about it. We got who will lose more production from Boyd's addition, DeAndre Hopkins or Calvin Ridley?
DeAndre Hopkins, man, I think it's just as much age and the money that really is being paid. I mean, I've said it before here. I think Hopkins is certainly on the other side of the hill, and I don't. If you could trade him for anything at this point, I would definitely be cashing out while there's still some value there. And really just got that huge bag. He should be a vocal point and kind of matches up pretty well with Will Levis' style of play, just chucking it up there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect Boyd to get a ton of work. So I'm still not too worried about their production this year, too. I think he's more of like an insurance play, as well. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys expect Boyd to eat into like I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see the talent there.
I expect Boyd to average, honestly, only 2-3 catches a game. I don't think Will Levis is going to be able to provide the, high volume of throwing, of throwing attempts to necessarily support Boyd as well. And I mean, D-Hop is still, he is aging. He is a lot older, but he still is solid and can make some pretty nice catches at times. And obviously they committed a lot of money to Calvin Ridley, so they do plan on using him. And then, I mean, even Okonkwo, he could factor into that, maybe some running back damage between Pollard and Spears. I just don't see Boyd necessarily getting much production at all. I think this is on one of my lower tiers of landing spots for him. But yeah, I see 2-3 catches, maybe a game from Boyd.
And I think it could hurt Jig more than anybody, actually, just because he would have been a pretty clear third option, and now he's probably bumped back to fourth. You have Callahan coming in as the new head coach. He brought his dad, who is a renowned offensive line coach, Bill Callahan. They drafted O-line first round in the last 2 seasons, and they brought in Tony Pollard on a pretty healthy deal to go with Tajay Spears. We certainly expect this to be a run-first team.
Yeah. When they brought in Ridley, they were talking about it. Obviously, this is hyperbole, like you hear from all coaches, but they were like, we're going to use Ridley like Jamar Chase as he's coming from Cincinnati. I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think Ridley is the more ideal downfield threat, while Boyd and DeAndre Hopkins are more intermediate, whether they be on the outside of the field or the inside. I do think they'll eat a little bit more into each other. I will say I was surprised to see, and obviously different coaching, different talent around them, but DeAndre Hopkins last year had a 14.8 yard ADOT. That was tied for the most in his career. So they were using him downfield, but I think that was more out of necessity than, want to. So even with Will Levis taking shots downfield, I think Boyd will eat more into Hopkins' work than Ridley of the two. But I agree, Okonkwo no longer really looking like that athletic upside tight end that you can grab, take a dart throw on late in redraft. All right. Let's move on. We got wide receivers coming up here. Rookie wide receivers, impact they're going to have both in the NFL and on their teammates. We'll kick it off at the top. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Arizona Cardinals. 104. He's got it made right now. Nobody around him to really challenge him for targets at all. They drafted Trey Benson to add to the running game, so maybe they lean a little bit more in that direction. But I think overall, Marvin Harrison is going to see at least, I'd say 9 to 11 targets in that range, probably average around 10 or so per game. I think he's going to eat. I personally have him as my wide receiver 8 in redraft right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can see him going that. I don't know if I'm necessarily willing to pay for that in redraft just because it is a rookie and there is a little, there could be some bumps in the start of his season. I don't think, I think halfway through the season, he's going to be a monster. But yeah, like you're saying, I mean, in Arizona, Kyler Murray is a solid quarterback to provide production to his targets. And it really is just Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride there. Trey Benson, James Conner, they're not two guys that I'm worried about, taking away Evan shaking his head because Michael Wilson, but
He is their wide receiver too. He's the wide
Yeah.
receiver too.
but it's pretty much just Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. there, and I just see Marvin Harrison really having a solid, at minimum, second half of the season. I think long term it is a great pick. Kyler Murray is pretty locked in there for at least a while, and I wouldn't see them moving on to another quarterback unless it was a quarterback they were very confident in. So I see it's a good landing spot. I mean, I probably would have preferred the Chargers if he did fall to 105, but nevertheless, still a great landing spot.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that he eventually will get to the point of getting like 10 targets a game. I think that might take some time though. So he might be too expensive for my liking of him in redraft this year going forward. I mean, but they're literally replacing Marquise Brown with Marvin Harrison Jr. and it's an incredible upgrade, I think, talent wise too. So, and just from a physical standpoint, more of a wide receiver one. I don't think Marquise can fit that bill, and I think the team needs it, and I think he's the guy. He's fully capable of delivering for that team too.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's been raised to be a wide receiver one in the NFL his whole life. The one concern I have is Kyler Murray's health. Obviously his outlook changes quite a bit if it's Clayton Tune or Desmond Ridder throwing him the ball versus Kyler. But long term, he's a slam dunk. He is as good a wide receiver pick as we've had, since Jamar Chase kind of seems to be the going thought. I think wide receiver 15, 16 is his absolute floor. And I could certainly see that 6 to 8 range that Dan mentions. I'm curious from a dynasty perspective. I was thinking about this, as we were, reviewing the show notes. From a dynasty perspective, what wide receivers would you not trade straight up? And I have 4 that I would not trade straight up for Marvin Harrison. And beyond that, I think anybody could go 1-for-1 for him. So I'd be curious what you guys think.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I wouldn't trade Chase, Lamb, Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Those are my
AJ
4.
Brown, I would not trade him straight up, even though he's definitely a bit older there. He just got that contract, and so does Jalen Hurts. So they're tied together, and he's proven. And then Puka, and that's it. That's why he's my wide receiver 8.
I agree on you there, except I would trade AJ Brown for Marvin Harrison Jr. just because of the age. Obviously AJ Brown got that contract, so we know he's locked in with Jalen Hurts for 3 more years, which does definitely boost his stock. But in my opinion, AJ Brown and him are pretty interchangeable just because AJ Brown is proven. Obviously I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a great NFL receiver, but you still never know transitioning to the NFL level. So I just think right there, they're pretty interchangeable. But if Marvin Harrison Jr. does work out to be, what everyone is the consensus thought is, he could be a top 3 wide receiver going forward. I could see it happening, but yeah, honestly, besides that, if you could maybe even trade Garrett Wilson for him, which, some people are still really high on him, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I did trade Garrett Wilson for Marvin Harrison, and now I'm kind of, I don't know. I wanted to see my team looking good at the moment. I didn't want to wait for the draft.
That was my whole reason for bringing up the question, Mason. Just wanted to get to Garrett Wilson or Harrison.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'll draft someone great with the 107. So whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I agree with you. I wouldn't do AJ Brown either, and my list would stop at Puka as well.
Yeah,
Not Garrett Wilson.
All right. So, really quick, just to touch on something you said, Evan. Marvin Harris, or the targets. Kyler Murray threw 33.5 targets per game last year coming off the ACL. Feel like that's going to be the bare minimum for him going forward. And they got a terrible defense, so I could definitely see those spike weeks where he's in the 40s, just playing catch up. So I personally feel like even just if it's, let's say, about 35 targets per game, if Marvin Harrison ends up with about 10 of them, that's a little bit under like a 28% target share, something like that. Ordinarily, I wouldn't project that for a rookie, but with him having nobody around him except Trey McBride, I think it's gonna get there.
I think he gets there
But
this season, but not right away. Not right away. Like I'm not going to expect him. Like I'm not.
oh yeah, not
Yeah.
game one.
Yeah.
All right. So we got Malik Neighbors up next, 106 to the Giants. I think this is going to be one of those draft picks where we really see how much a quarterback can impact a wide receiver's production. Because Neighbors is in the same exact situation where there's nobody around him, not even a Trey McBride or like a James Conner out the backfield to catch, a Trey Benson to take away additional targets or additional attempts, on the ground, making it a rushing heavy offense. It's just all bad in New York, and we're gonna see how much Neighbors can do with 10 to 12 targets, with half of them being screens and slants. It's gonna be bad in New York, but I still think that Neighbors could be a top 12 wide receiver with the volume that's coming his way. What do you guys think about his redraft value and his dynasty value?
I mean, I think dynasty value, I don't think it changes it too much. I think just the talent is pretty elite for him. I am a little worried maybe for a couple years. If Daniel Jones doesn't get back to what he was kind of doing a couple years ago, where it's at least solid production, I don't expect Neighbors to do much this year. Maybe if Danny Dimes does do bad again this year, that they do decide to move on and maybe bring someone else in. That contract situation for him, for Daniel Jones, does make it a little weird. But I just think in the long run, Neighbors is going to be a very solid guy. I'm kind of looking at not drafting him anymore, and maybe like after this offseason, buying low on him just because he's going to probably not have the best year one. Maybe trying to get a good value trade in for him. But yeah, I think long term Neighbors is going to be good. Just he might have a shaky year one, year two.
Yeah, I love Neighbors at the Giants too, and I still got a little bit of faith in Danny Dimes there. And y'all keep sleeping on these wide receiver twos on teams, and they're gonna fall on draft boards and be like 15th round picks, and I'll scoop them up. But Jalen Hyatt, take a flyer on him, dude. Like if Malik Neighbors is opening up the field, like it could leave him more open. Like he was like probably getting a lot of the attention from the defenses, and now that's going to Neighbors too. So
I bet Hyatt will finish fourth of the wide receivers in targets.
Fourth of all the wide receivers
of the Giants wide receivers.
I'd take that.
I was going to say, I think Wandale is probably a better fit for some of that short stuff where Jalen Hyatt's more of a field stretcher that Neighbors is going to take that role.
I think he won't break the top four though, Dan. We don't want to write that one down.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
I would want Wandale straight up with more targets than Hyatt, and I'm not sure. Slayton's going to be third. You're projecting there.
That's what. Yeah, Slayton would be my third.
Yeah, I could see it still. He's an underneath guy too. I'm out on Neighbors for redraft. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I don't think he's an NFL starting quarterback. I know he had the one good season. I didn't think he was a starter when they drafted him. Certainly didn't when they gave him the huge bag of money. I know they're locked in. Honestly, if Drew Lock could beat him out, or Jones gets re-injured, I'd be higher on Neighbors with Drew Lock than Daniel Jones. I don't think it changes his value from a dynasty perspective. What I will say is I know I was probably the highest on Neighbors amongst us, and even said that maybe if he goes to the Chargers, he challenges Marvin Harrison as the wide receiver one. That's completely out the window. He will get plenty of target share, but that targets are liable to be 10 yards over his head, 5 yards behind him. He's going to have to make some acrobatic catches to really produce. On paper, this Giants offense looks like one of the worst offenses, not just this season coming in, but one of the worst offenses we've seen. They may rival the Panthers of last year at just being completely inept. So I'm out. The price for redraft, I'm out.
That is a good question, too. I'll look that up while we're moving on to Rome Odunze. Odunze goes 109 to the Chicago Bears. Also, got to throw this in there. A little something for Mason from our boy JC.
Don't you even start, man. You know
It's
what?
a family show, but F Philly. Philly.
The Niners.
I think everyone gets behind that except Philly.
The Niners beat Philly as bad as we did again last year to knock you guys out of playoffs this year. No. We'll see what happens, JC. Don't even start me. Me and him have a very
Stop that dog.
we talk so much crap about the Eagles and Niners. It's all friendly, but JC is my worst enemy in a way.
Laying down the gauntlet. Worst enemy. Would you call him your nemesis?
Rivals. Yeah.
Yeah, he probably is my football fan nemesis, to be honest. We probably talk crap to each other once a week, so
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Evan's mine, and I have him on our podcast. So
Yeah, I'm a toss up between me and Shriner. I think you have two. You got two.
Bobby Schreider stepped in hard this year. So, and he's got those wide receivers, boy. This guy's got Chase, Lamb, and who's the third? Waddle. Just an insane trio. All right, let's move on, though. Odunze, 109 to the Chicago Bears. He's going to be the wide receiver 3 on that team behind DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. They got tons of weapons on this team on the offensive side of the ball. They got Cole Kmet, also Gerald Everett, who's like a solid pass-catching tight end, too. DeAndre Swift. It's going to be difficult for Rome Odunze to see a ton of targets in year 1. However, Keenan Allen he's just signed a 1-year deal. Nothing beyond that. They voided the rest of the years. DJ Moore only has 2 years left on his contract. I do believe they just extended Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett's on a small contract. So opportunity in year 2, however, not in year 1. I'm curious. I know you guys don't have your full redraft rankings or anything yet, but if you were to give him a range, what range do you put Odunze in redraft year 1?
For production range, or what do you mean? Range?
Yeah, so like so personally, I have Odunze. I got it right here. I got Odunze as a wide receiver 3 in year 1. I love the talent. I think he's going to be incredible. But for 2024 redraft leagues, it's going to be hard for him to find a ton of targets. I think the only way he finishes higher than a wide receiver 3 is if he is just the red zone guy, and he ends up with 8 to 10 touchdowns.
Yeah. I don't see him doing much year 1 unless Keenan Allen does get injured, which, he has had a lot of injury concerns. So that is something to kind of maybe factor in that, Keenan Allen could be out at some point. But just between Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and even DeAndre Swift, who is a good passing running back, I don't necessarily see Odunze doing a ton year 1. I think he's going to be that guy that you kind of maybe contemplate, do I throw him in as a flex? I don't think he's going to do awful or anything, but I just think I'm going to probably be passing on him a lot in redraft. But for dynasty value, I think it is a good landing spot. If Caleb Williams is as good as everybody, as we're all expecting him to be, if he's really worthy of that 101 draft pick, I think long-term year 2, it will be a good spot because Keenan Allen will probably be gone. If Odunze does show that he has the talent to be an NFL wide receiver, which I think he does. And then I don't know. Even DJ Moore, he's not necessarily locked in there for long term. So I think Odunze, maybe 3-4 years he could be Caleb Williams' number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's too risky. I think a high end wide receiver 3 is almost the ceiling. I'm just too high on Keenan, and Keenan could also get frustrated with this offense too. I think I was looking up something too. Caleb Williams had the longest time to throw, and that's showing a lot of timing issues. And Keenan's used to being very on time too, so there could be some frustration going on there as well. But yeah. Right now, it's really hard to see him breaking into the wide receiver 2 range with just minimal opportunity. No, not really too much.
So I'm gonna go the other direction than you guys, and I know it's kind of been the talk. He's wide receiver 3, and obviously there are 2 proven guys. But Keenan Allen's 32 years old with an extensive history of injuries, and I know I mentioned this before, half joking, half not. He's leaving warm weather and going to cold Chicago. That's not going to help his injury history. And again, he's 32 years old. I see a world where Rome could be the wide receiver one this season in Chicago. I know DJ is a big play guy. He had some really big games, and then there were a lot of games in the past season where he was invisible. So the other thing that I think really maybe not being taken into account, DJ and Keenan Allen are on vacation right now. They're in the off season. They're chilling. There's a history of high end quarterbacks getting drafted with receiver in the same season having incredible chemistry very early on. And that's not just abstract because they were drafted together. They're in rookie minicamp together right now, building their chemistry. If he falls, I'll be all over him in redraft. And certainly I think there could be a case to put him over Neighbors as far as dynasty. And I was very high on Neighbors before, but just the quarterback situation, man, if Caleb works out and he's as good as people think he can be, then you're tied to this guy. They're both first-round picks. If they perform, they're together for at least 5 years, could be much longer. So just the outlook is incredibly high for me for Odunze. And I think it could come in his rookie year. I think he could surprise a lot of people and be a value in redraft.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's kind of what I was going to lead into is the dynasty value versus the redraft value. I do have him as a wide receiver 3 in redraft unless there's some injury that happens. But I agree that long term, unless the Giants figure out quarterback, which when's the last time they figured out quarterback since Eli Manning, and even that was not like great for fantasy. But I do think that the long term, like year 2, I could already see, like you're saying, Odunze being above Neighbors. I think everyone's going to see the situation as is, even if Keenan finishes out the season fully healthy. And like we have a negative view on Keenan's health, but over the last 7 years that he's played, 4 of those years, 16 games played, and 6 of the years, 13 games or more. There's just a couple of seasons with bad injury luck, and then he entered the league also with injury luck. So I feel like that's what kind of sticks in people's minds. That's part of the reason why I still have him low in redraft, but year 2, I could absolutely see him jumping over Neighbors because Neighbors has all of the opportunity and no excuses other than a quarterback. And Odunze has all of the excuses in front of him. People will say, "Oh, he was the wide receiver 3. It's a rookie quarterback, even though it's Caleb." But he's got the room in the future to skyrocket after year 1.
So I got a board bet if any of you guys want to take it. I would say Odunze is going to be at least second. He's going to be first or second in receptions for the Bears this season.
I'll take it. Keenan will get a ton of catches, and there's just too much other people to throw the ball to. So I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll take it as well.
All right.
I won't actually because I could see it. Like I said, if there's frustration with Keenan, one of these guys could get just kind of like be more of just like a veteran presence.
Are we saying catches per game or catches on the season?
Catches total.
That does help your case because he might miss some games. If I say Keenan won't miss games, then he will miss games. So, all right. So while I'm writing this down, we got Brian Thomas as the 4th wide receiver off the board. If you guys haven't caught on yet, I'm going just in strict draft order. So Brian Thomas, pick 23 in the first round to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think there's a ton of opportunity open for him. I feel like they got Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. in the same view, but when Thomas was available, jumped on the opportunity to get the young stud. And I do think that this, like the talent that they have on the team, skews towards Trevor Lawrence taking a lot of downfield shots. That's what I'm seeing right now. Lee, what are you thinking here?
He is paired with Lawrence, which is a good spot. He feels like a better version of Gabe Davis to me. I think he'll be more consistent. But for me, as far as the Jacksonville receivers, I'd rather own Christian Kirk as far as redraft goes. I think Kirk's the big winner for 24. He's still going to see a ton of targets. You still have Ingram getting a ton of targets. So I'm out on Brian Thomas as far as redraft this season, unless he's an incredible value and falls. I think the dynasty value is still there. Kirk's not getting any younger. Ingram's not getting any younger, and hopefully he can develop that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. But he's still very raw as well. So to me, he's a guy that's going to take a year or two before we really see what he's going to be in the NFL.
Yeah,
Evan? Oh, Mason, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was going to say I kind of disagree with you there. I think he actually has a pretty decent opportunity here in Jacksonville. And they don't have really a wide receiver. Like he's so fast. Like is Gabe Davis that fast? No.
He didn't at least measure at the combine as that fast. He's a big dude. He's fast for his size, but he's not the same speed as Brian Thomas.
He brings something different to this offense that they don't have with any other of the players, and I think that is more valuable than even Christian Kirk. Like I think there's a chance that he does beat Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk is a safe bet there for sure, but there's definitely the chance. Like I think the ceiling is pretty far above Christian Kirk actually.
In year one, he was saying redraft.
Yeah, redraft. I like him in redraft a lot. Like I actually think there's a lot of opportunity for him here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm kind of mixed on my opinion for it because part of me says that he could definitely just explode with that speed. You know, he is faster than Gabe Davis, but they both are kind of that deep threat. So it could definitely take away, a couple big down the field plays from Brian Thomas, that go towards Gabe Davis. They did sign him to a 3-year deal, I believe, and they paid him, I think it's $39 million for 3 years for Gabe Davis. And that's just, when you got two guys that are kind of, deep threat guys, it could take away a lot from both of them. I think the biggest loser of them drafting this is for sure Gabe Davis. I thought finally, oh man, this could be a really good landing spot for him. And now it's just like he's got another guy coming in who is going to hurt his value a lot. Obviously with Brian Thomas's speed, they could use him for a lot of other things besides, just the deep threat. But I think that will kind of take a year for him to, fit into that offense. I think year 2, Brian Thomas could really be, a very good receiver. But I think year 1, it's still going to be the only consistent guy I think is going to be Christian Kirk, and I think Evan Ingram as well. But year 2, year 3, Brian Thomas could really evolve into a guy that, you're consistently starting in your fantasy lineups.
Yeah. I was kind of on the same board, same side of it there. I do think that Brian Thomas is, I don't think he's going to eat into Kirk's production too much. They're completely different types of wide receivers. Christian Kirk last year, before he got injured in week 13, so weeks 1 through 12, he was the wide receiver 23. He's not going to be the guy that offers you the week-winning upside, but he is going to be a solid addition to your team, a guy that you can draft as your wide receiver 3 or 4 that will give you consistent wide receiver 2 numbers. I would also take Kirk in redraft by a long shot. In Dynasty, I would lean towards the upside in Brian Thomas Jr. I think eventually he'll figure it out. The one other thing, though, is Trevor Lawrence was top 3 in downfield targets last season, and I believe top 5 in completion percentage in those 20-plus yard targets. I do think that'll bode well for Brian Thomas. I think there's a lot of evidence of him on tape where you're like, how did he get that wide open? And Evan, you were talking about his speed. Unfortunately, I didn't get much of the all-22 from the LSU tape, so I couldn't see how he got to be that wide open. But, I do think that there's going to be a ton of opportunity for him in the next 1 or 2 years. But I agree with Mason. It's going to take some time for that to settle in. All right, so we got Xavier Worthy as the next pick. 128 to the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of opportunity. We haven't really been talking about, Rashee Rice. I try not to talk about this stuff until we got something from the NFL that's kind of official. I just do think that it's evident that he's going to miss some time at least. So that does give him a little boost in redraft. I think
on which charge? On which thing?
Right. Yeah, the crashing a car and fleeing the scene, and now an alleged what was it?
Assault
fight
of
at
a
a club?
journalist. Yeah,
Assault
yeah.
of a journalist too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't look too much into it until we have some like steadfast news from the NFL. But it's going to be create some opportunity for Xavier Worthy, regardless. At the beginning of the season, I think we all agree that Rashee Rice will likely miss at least 4 to 6 games. It's seeming like.
Or I
So
mean, a banana, I guess.
with that being said, obviously Worthy, young, talented speedster attached to Patrick Mahomes for at least the next 4, if not 5 years, if they give him the extension. Do you guys have him ranked higher in dynasty or redraft this year?
I have Dynasty, just because I think Marquise Brown will take away a little bit from him, but he is only locked in for that 1 year deal. I think the first couple weeks, Xavier Worthy could honestly show up a lot, just because there is a very, very strong likelihood that Rashee Rice will be suspended for at least some matter of games. And if Worthy does kind of find his role in the offense, then it could be dangerous. But I mean, there is obviously still Kelsey as a threat, taking away a lot. Hope to God Kadarius Toney does something this year instead of just dropping passes, but he probably won't. That's just hopeful thinking from me, because as anyone who has watched the show for a while knows, that I was very high on Kadarius Toney last year. So really hoping that Toney can kind of evolve and do at least something productive. But yeah, no, I mean, Worthy is just, I mean, Tyreek Hill 2.0, there's potential of that with the speed. I mean, I don't think he's going to be as good as Tyreek Hill. I mean, Tyreek Hill is an elite wide receiver, but if he can even somewhat compare to what Tyreek did when he was on this Kansas City Chiefs offense, Worthy is just, he could end up being just after year one, being a top 10 wide receiver in Dynasty.
Yeah. No, you hit it there too, because they do have they have a receiver with almost the exact same skill set that they brought into, and Kelsey's obviously their number one option. I do think he's going to be relevant this year in redraft, but not as high as I have him for Dynasty either. I love him for Dynasty, but he obviously carries some risk as well. He's like one of those guys that I love, but I don't feel good about loving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think he's the clear winner. And there were several wide receivers that won, but as far as value increasing, best possible landing spot, I mean, you can make an argument that he's wide receiver 2 out of this class right now, just based on being tied to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce being on the way out. Hollywood's on a 1 year deal. Rashee Rice has lost his damn mind. So, it could be just Xavier Worthy. They traded up to get him as well, and to me that says something when, kind of like Buffalo last year trading up for Kincaid, and his year got overshadowed because Laporta just, broke all the rookie records, but he had a really solid rookie year. We're really high on him going into this year. You trade up for a guy in the first round, it shows that the coaching staff has a plan for that guy. They know what they want to do with him. Andy Reid, we all know he's a brilliant offensive mind. He's going to find creative ways to get the ball in Xavier Worthy's hands beyond just, 9 routes and throwing it deep. With that kind of speed, that kind of explosiveness, being tied to that offense, he was a guy I was kind of down on before the draft. And now, like I said, I think he's clearly the wide receiver 4. I don't – maybe one of you guys would put Brian Thomas over him. I certainly would not. But I think from a dynasty perspective, if you see him go as wide receiver 2 in the draft or 3, I don't really think that's a crazy move either, just because situation matters so much, and you just know how well he's going to be coached up, and he's paired with the best quarterback playing today. So I think redraft, I think there's some value there as well. Kind of depends on what range he's going in. I haven't really looked at a lot of the redraft ADPs yet, but yeah, he's a guy I'll be looking to draft on both sides.
Yeah, we're starting to get to the point where there's a few players we're going to be talking about where I have them higher ranked in redraft just based off situation than I do in dynasty. Xavier Worthy's one of them. They're not far off of each other, and I don't have my full ranking list now. Just kind of eyed the list by Fantasy Pros and said, above that guy, below that guy. Here's the range. Xavier Worthy right now, my wide receiver 24 to 28 in Dynasty. In redraft, I have him 18 to 24 because I do expect Rashee Rice to miss some time. I don't think Marquise Brown is it. He's been given so many opportunities. Maybe Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will be able to utilize him better and, likely so than his past teams. I just don't think that he is it to the point where they are going to get Xavier Worthy out of the game plan. And, Rashee Rice was a great talent or is a great talent. He is, very athletic, but he was one of the worst route runners to come into the NFL, according to Matt Harmon's reception perception last year. And it's still great because Andy Reid knows how to run plays to scheme athletic people open, and they'll do the rest from there. So I think Xavier Worthy is a much better route runner already than Rashee Rice is. And if they get him in open space, good night. He is gone. So I do like Xavier Worthy for this year in redraft more. This guy that we're about to talk about is on the polar opposite side of the argument, though. Ricky Pearsall. He was drafted by the San Francisco 49ers. Your boy. You got, what is it, Slick Rick? You guys calling him over in there in San Fran?
Slick Rick.
Slick Rick.
Yeah.
Drafted 31st overall by San Fran. Mason, talk about it.
So my first reaction to us drafting him was why? Because we obviously have some talented wide receivers, and all it means is that Ayuk or Debo is probably out after this year. I don't see any other scenario. But really thinking about it, I think he will be good long term. I think he might have a rough year one because, he does have to compete with Debo. He does have to compete with Ayuk, Kittle, CMC gets a lot of targets out the backfield. Even Jawan Jennings, we brought him back. He's going to take away some targets. So I don't think Ricky necessarily has a good year one. I'm kind of avoiding him in redraft. I think that's kind of my opinion so far. I think he will have a couple weeks where he does, make a big impact, but not enough to where I'm going to necessarily be wanting to start him in a redraft league. Long term, though, I think it is a great play. I think he does fit into, what Kyle Shanahan definitely can cook up in an offense. I don't know. I'm still to this day very mixed on how I feel about it because I do think that he is a very solid wide receiver. I think he can, produce in the future, but I'm going to miss Ayuk or Debo so much. It's going to hurt me when I hear that news that one of them's gone. So I'm very mixed. It's really hard for me to kind of give my opinion on it because I love the guys we already have. But it makes sense for one of them to be gone because the Niners do have to pay Purdy pretty soon. And he's going from the last pick pay to potentially top 12 paid quarterback in the league. So one of Ayuk or Debo does have to go. So I think year two, Slick Rick is, a very solid play. So maybe I'm kind of trying to avoid him right now and buy him, maybe halfway through the season when he hasn't done a ton yet, but has shown his flashes. That's kind of my point of view on where I see him and dynasty value.
For sure, I agree with that last point there. Evan, what are you thinking on it?
I definitely think that they're moving on from not necessarily Brandon Ayuk. I think he gets the deal, but I think they move on from Debo. If I'm not mistaken, after June or after some point, if they move on from him, even this year, they save like $2.2 million, if I'm not mistaken. So what really next year, this I don't know. Okay, so that's
looking at it right now.
I feel like they could. Why'd they draft another wide receiver in the fourth then too? Like that's just
planning for the future. They're one of the teams that don't have to draft for team need because they don't have many, if any.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you guys are a good fun organization. I'm very jealous of it.
with two top end wide receivers on that team already, and then just an absolute loaded on every other front, it's really hard to see him. So redraft, if nothing changes this year, I'm out on him for redraft for sure. But Dynasty, obviously, I really like him in Dynasty. I think he's a steal in second.
Yeah, well, to jump in real quick, Ayuk is not getting traded. He's either getting extended or this is going to be his last year in SF. He will play through. The office has very little intentions of trading him. They would have traded him during the draft if they really wanted to. So
Yeah, just as
Ricky
of
is
10
going to
hours
be
ago.
wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 this year.
Right, yeah.
For
They didn't
not
trade him
fantasy, but
before.
for the Niners.
If they didn't trade him before the draft, they wouldn't have, like you were saying, report 10 hours ago. Ian Rappaport reports the 49ers are focused on keeping Brandon Ayuk for the long term. So hopefully they get a deal done. That does prove your point, though, Evan. Like, they could definitely move on from Debo, even without it being before June 1st. You were saying it'd be about a
2.2,
$2.4 million cap save if they cut him next year. So I think they're going full force this year, but they could either trade or cut Debo next year.
No.
They're not going to cut him. Debo's too valuable. There's no way they cut him.
Right. They trade him for something, even if they understand it's going to be one of those things. He'll be traded for too little. But yeah, Lee, what do you got?
So yeah, I think I don't know. I know that's kind of popular wisdom that they're not going to trade up Brandon Ayuk, and Mason's over there manifesting that. But I wouldn't write that. I would write that with pencil. I wouldn't write that with pen. We'll see. There's still I could very very easily see a world where, and as you guys kind of pointed out, one of those two guys is not there to start the season in 2024, which obviously if you're drafting early. And most redrafts don't draft this early. This is mostly dynasty. But if you're drafting early or even dynasty, if that occurs, Ricky's value is going to skyrocket. You know, you're going to strap a rocket to his back, and he's going to be a very valuable rookie pick. Redraft, I could still see some value there. Like to spread the ball around. You know, Kittle's the problem with the San Francisco offense, and it was a problem last year outside of CMC. It was the rotation of guys. You know, Ayuk would have a big game, Debo would have a big game, Kittle would have a big game, but generally it's just so many mouths to feed. Not everybody's having a big game at the same time. So if they're not injured and they're all playing, you really have to kind of decide who you're going to start as far as redraft goes. Dynasty, and we'll get into the other guys in just a moment, but I think the first two wide receivers in the second round are clearly above the last two wide receivers in the first round to me. Just opportunity is the biggest thing. You know, I could see both of those guys having a huge impact redraft wise, and dynasty. I'm looking at those guys just being tied to, you know, good quarterback situations versus, you know, and obviously Purdy's a good situation. I'm not quite ready to anoint him as being the elite quarterback that you know Josh Allen is, but he wins games. And, you know, we'll see. He's going to get paid. You're going to have to make him a top 6 paid quarterback when that time comes, probably, Mason. So there's going to be some reconfiguring, and it's certainly planning for the future. But to me, the one thing I would say as far as your strategy, Mason, in a dynasty, I've seen him go mid-second round. Maybe he just does nothing his rookie year and that value goes down. But to me, he's a value where he's going in dynasty drafts, as long as you don't need him to contribute year one. If you have a good team and, you know, you're really planning for the future, kind of like the 49ers, Ricky's a guy you can get around 204 to 207, 208. And there's a lot of value in a first-round wide receiver and a really good offense, you know, at that value, at that cost, rather.
How dare you guys say that you believe in Purdy?
The private chat's popping off.
He is
Person lead to the next realm. So we got the next 4 guys, three guys that I want to talk about. I'll bring them all up at once. Then we're going to move on to tight ends pretty quick here. But we got Xavier Legette going 132 as the last pick of the first to the Carolina Panthers. Keon Coleman goes first pick of the second round to the Buffalo Bills, and Ladd McConkey second pick of the second round to the Chargers. Of the 3, who is going to have the highest finished in redraft? Evan, what do you think?
In redraft? Shoot. I want to say Ladd, but honestly, it could be Keon. And then it could be Leggett too. But Ladd, I say, is the safest bet. And I'm a Chargers fan, so keep that in mind.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say redraft McConkey as well, just because Herbert is there as well. And I mean, it could easily be Keon Coleman just because Josh Allen, the passing volume is there. And, just passing talent is also there as well. But I do want to just give it quick on Leggett. I do have a lot more faith in him than I've seen him go in a lot of in a lot of rookie drafts. I've seen him go like as late as like 209. I've also seen him go like 203. I think honestly Leggett is that 203, 204 value. Carolina traded up to him before the draft. They had a lot of faith in him, and there was a lot of talks that they really wanted Leggett. I think that they are planning on using on him. I think he's going to be a great fit into that Carolina offense. I mean, you don't trade up, unless you really plan on using a guy. I got a lot of faith in Leggett. The general consensus does. I really don't see him beating out Coleman or Ladd McConkey just because of the quarterback talent, unless Bryce Young does have this revolutionary year where he does evolve into an elite quarterback, which I think Bryce Young will have a big improvement season. But I just think Leggett will be that guy. I mean, it's him, Deontay Johnson, and Adam Thielen, which Adam Thielen is way too old. He's really aging out. And I mean, Adam Thielen still could produce this year, but he is getting older. And Deontay Johnson, I do like, but I just think Leggett could really evolve by like week 12, let's say, into the true wide receiver one in that offense.
Lee?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's pretty clear for me. It's Ladd, and it's not just quarterback because I think, sorry Evan, but most anyone would take Josh Allen over Justin Herbert. But if you look at the supporting cast, Buffalo still, they brought in Curtis Samuel. Maybe I'm a little bit of a homer. If he's healthy, he's an NFL quality receiver that's going to be on the field and he's going to earn targets. They have Dalton Kincaid, who is poised for a breakout. They traded up for him last year. I mentioned that earlier. Could be a stud tight end. James Cook is a really good pass-catching back that I expect to be utilized a bit more in that role this season. The Panthers, you just kind of crapped on Adam Thielen, but he was lighting the fantasy world on fire for the first 8 weeks of the season. And, yes, he did run out of gas a little bit. The entire Panthers offense did, but they're not asking him to be the number one this year. They brought in Deontay Johnson, who is a very solid NFL receiver, and drafted a guy very early. We'll see how quickly he gets back from injury, but, Jonathan Brooks. So you look at the surrounding cast, and then we look at the Chargers, and it's Quentin Johnson, Josh Palmer, and nobody. There's just the competition for targets.
First round wide receiver is a nobody. I love it.
DJ Shark too.
If that's what we're pulling on,
you just pulled in Curtis Samuel, so come on.
Look up the career numbers for Curtis Samuel versus DJ Shark.
Oh yeah,
or just last year.
But just to your point too earlier, Adam Thielen through week 8. Adam Thielen through week 8 was the wide receiver 8, 20.2 points per game in PPR. He can light it up from time to time. I agree, though. The opportunity is wide open. The wide receiver core there is lacking, so there's going to be some opportunity. Really quick, before we move on to tight ends, super fast. I didn't realize how late we are. All right. Rome Odunze or Ladd McConkey in redraft?
Ladd.
I'd say Ladd for sure.
Lee doesn't like that.
It's a tough question for me because, as we discussed earlier, I'm higher on Rome than you guys are. I think Rome is a vastly superior player, talent-wise, than Ladd. The opportunity, man, it's talent plus opportunity. The opportunity is scary in the Chargers with all that crap around him. But I think I got to go Rome there.
I put a poll up on our Twitter page, and it is not helping. If you can see, 402 votes, split dead 50-50. Right down the middle, 201 to 201. So thank you, Twitter, for all your help.
Shout out to Sleazeball FF. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. He kills it on there. Great follow if you don't already.
What a
But
great
I am
name.
also leading Lad McConkey as well. If you guys listened to the show before, you know how high I was on Lad pre-draft, and then just with all of that opportunity available to him, I just think that especially year one, I'm leaning Lad. If he can capitalize on it afterwards, it might even be close in a dynasty perspective, depending on what we see in the run to pass splits, how we see them utilize their wide receiver one. It'll all be new territory with a new head coach. Let's touch on Brock Bowers though before we completely head out here. Brock Bowers drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders in somewhat of a surprising pick. I definitely did not see that Brock Bowers pick coming up with them taking Michael Mayer in the second round last year. He goes, what was it, 13th overall, I believe, to the Raiders. He definitely has, I think he's going to have some struggles in year one, getting peppered with targets, having Devontae Adams there, Jacoby Myers. They bring in Michael Gallup. They still have, it's Trey Palmer. Is that correct?
Trey
Trey
Tucker.
Tucker. Trey Tucker.
Trey
Thank
Palmer in Tampa.
Bucks, right. I know the two teams, and I know they're both small and fast, and I always confuse the two. Regardless, though, yeah, I think Bowers is going to have a tough time in year one. I think that he will eventually be the tight end, that top 5 tight end year in and year out that we kind of project him to be coming into the draft. But what do you guys think about his dynasty draft versus his redraft value?
I think redraft and dynasty, it's still. I mean, I might have moved him back a couple spots, honestly, just a little bit, just because Michael Mayer. That's the biggest loser of this pick. Is Michael Mayer just dead in the water for dynasty, or is he just not going to really? Unless they're running a lot of 2 tight end sets, I don't necessarily like the pick at all. But I mean, I don't know if the Raiders offense necessarily is drafting with the thought process of using him a lot. I saw a report today that they did a coin flip to decide whether or not they chose Brock Bowers or Terry Arnold, which is just like, to me, that's just terrible front office work if it decides to a coin flip. But
Yeah,
Brock Bowers, the talent is there. QB play is a little risky. I think they would have maybe drafted one this year, but obviously Michael Penix went way too early at the 108, and then there just wasn't any quarterbacks there when it got to the 113. So I say maybe next year he has a lot better every year, but this year it's going to be some shaky quarterback play. But I think long term we still kind of can value Bowers as the same, because as we all know, tight ends their rookie years usually aren't as consistent. Obviously this year was kind of a difference with Laporta going off and Kincaid throwing up some numbers, but long term, I'm still fine with it.
Yeah, I'm probably out both redraft and dynasty for him. Like he moved well into the second round for me, and a lot of reasons, like a lot of the action from the tight ends come from like play actions, and they're not going to fool anybody with him out there. Like if Myers out there, that's where I could see a lot of work happening. So I don't think Myers not going to get any work. Like I think he's going to get work, and it's a long road ahead for Bowers, and I'm not necessarily buying in until I see it now.
Lee?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we are contractually obligated to agree once per show, and this is it. I'm with Evan. I'm out. I'm out on redraft. I'm out on dynasty. The first round tight ends, when they hit, it takes years. At his capital, I don't want him in dynasty. Not where I'd have to draft him. He's in the back end of the second round, middle second round, honestly, for me. But there's just too much wide receiver talent with immediate opportunity, with good quarterback situations.
Really quick. I'm sorry. We got to cut it off for the Atlanta radio broadcast. We're going to continue this talk, plus a couple of other notable tight ends. If you joined us in Atlanta, we appreciate you guys. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel. got much more here for you coming up. All right, Lee, continue your takes there.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just historically speaking, and just it doesn't happen fast, especially for these first round tight ends. I'm gonna go ahead and say, and maybe this is a bit homerish, but I think Ben Sinnett is going to have a better rookie year than Brock Bowers. I think he's in a better opportunity. And again, maybe not as much playing style, but if we look back at last season, Kincaid was the first tight end taken. They traded up, not quite the draft capital that Bowers had. And then you had this kid who all draft season he shot up boards. He was not projected to be the second tight end off the board early on. And he shot up, and the Lions took him in the second round. And I'm not saying Ben Sinnett is going to have a Sam Laporta year because that's unheard of. But I think the Senator is going to have a better season this year than Bowers. I think he's clearly in line for more targets. I don't think Zach Ertz is going to keep the job for very long. And at the value you can get him, early third round, I'm all over that before I'm drafting Brock Bowers at 106 or 107.
Really quick, Lee, could you show us your shirt there?
Hey.
If you're with us,
that on the board
you
as
can see
well.
that on the YouTube. He's got that Redskins shirt on. Or wow, I mean, it is Redskins shirt.
It is Redskins. We're old school.
But
I'd
yeah,
say
no,
we're in agreement there, though. I'd sign that with pencil. I would not sign that with pen, though. I would sign that with pencil.
Sure.
yeah, I think that everything we've talked about is completely valid. I do think that the Raiders had shown a capacity to go run heavy last year. I think that two tight end sets are a likelihood. And honestly, if you look at their roster, that's what they're set up for right now. Their best roster, or like their best lineup, go out there, two tight ends, Mayer and Bowers, Adams and Myers, and then one single back there with Zamir White, or maybe Alexander Madison every once in a while. I think that is going to be a lot of what we see out of the Raiders. That's not necessarily going to be great for Brock Bowers year one. Adams is going to continue to get older. Myers is on the second year of a 3-year deal, and I don't think he's going to have a lot of target competition in the upcoming years. However, this brings us to our last point on Brock Bowers. Where do you have him ranked for Dynasty? All right, I guess I will go first.
Yeah, go for it.
So I got Brock Bowers as tight end 6. Right now, Fantasy Pros has him as tight end 5 ahead of Kyle Pitts. I would flip those two. I think that, a lot of the top end talent is kind of obvious. Excuse me. You got Sam Laporta leading it off. Trey McBride, Mark Andrews is still a dominant tight end that's young enough to still slip into that top end portion for me. Dalton Kincaid, and then for me, Kyle Pitts, and then Brock Bowers. I do still have him listed again over TJ Hawkinson. I think that, just with Hawkinson having the big injury, not knowing if he's going to be, how much of this year he's going to be available for, I have Bowers ahead of him, both kind of giving up that year one and then seeing more success from year 2 on. And then Hawkinson's obviously a bit older than Bowers, so less ahead of him, and JJ McCarthy there instead of Kirk Cousins slinging it. So that's where I'm at. Where do you guys sit on Brock Bowers' tight end dynasty value?
Not that high.
Not tight end 6.
Not tight end 6. 6 is a little too high for me. I mean, I think he could be a tight end 1, but he's not there yet for me. I gotta see it still. There's too much murky waters right now.
I'll send you the Fantasy Pros list to you, so you got something in front of you. But somebody else take it away. Do you have anyone have a specific number for him in Dynasty?
I'm looking at the list, the Fantasy Pros list as well, Dan, and obviously there's some parts I disagree with. One, I think Pitts with a quarterback, and now who knows when Penix is going to play, but he's tied to a Cousins for 3 seasons. I definitely have Hawkinson. He's 26. I know he had the injury, but he's in that prime age. What's that?
Hawkinson is tight end number 2. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So
I don't have Hawkinson that high, but I definitely have him above Bowers. Honestly, like I'm looking at that list and I'm like, do I put Brock Bowers over Luke Musgrave? Because he's tied to Jordan Love. So I'm in the early teens. And, that's kind of where I would draw the line.
Wow.
I'm probably around 13 or 14 for him. There's a lot of tight ends in that 27, 28, 29 range that I still would rather have. To me, it's hard to project more than 2 to 3 years out, and he's going to be a guy you have to wait on.
yeah, no, I mean, I think Bowers is definitely a guy to wait on. I believe I had him at 106, 107 before. I don't have my list up in front, but now I have him 109, 110, just because that's around where people are drafting him at. But I think honestly, he's a guy that you can maybe buy in a year or two for a little cheaper price than that. So I'm kind of out on like at the 110 in a super flex league. I'd honestly rather take Bo Nix than I would Bowers if Bowers does fall that far, just because just because of what I think you can get Bowers for at a later price, 2-3 seasons down the line. Besides the Penix draft, this was the number 2 pick that was just like, wow to me. I was just really shocked. This was probably the most surprising landing besides Penix.
The landing.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was just gonna say the landing spot was for sure surprising. It's just like I look at beyond year one, which already takes some time for tight ends to develop in this league. But if we look into next year, Devontae Adams will be 33 years old. He'll be owed $36.2 million, and they can cut him right at the beginning of the year for $15.7 million. They would save $20 million in dead cap. They can trade him for, I'm sure it'd be penny on the dollar at that point, but they'd be able to trade him. Kind of similar situation with Jacoby Myers. Next year, not owed nearly as much, just $11 million, but it's a contract they can get out of for $8 million again, right at the beginning of the contract. They don't have wide receivers behind them that are encouraging to me. Gallup was brought in on a 1-year deal. Mayer, he's going to be there, and I get it, but like he's not as nearly as athletic as Brock Bowers is. I think they could use Mayer as the inline tight end while they throw Bowers in the slot and have any wide receiver they bring in on the outside. I just personally think that he has a lot of upside after year one, but year one's not going to be great. It's not going to be what people thought he was, especially if you did your rookie draft before the NFL draft. It's not going to be what you signed up to get in year one. But I think there's a lot of promise ahead. All right. You guys want to move on to
real quick?
Yeah,
I was just going to say I agree, Mason, with the take the Bo Nix over Bowers, and my Bo Nix hate is well established. I just the value, it's going to take so long to get a return. I'm pretty concerned with it. And the other thing I would say is yes, Bowers is more athletic and a better pass catching tight end. But don't sleep with Michael Mayer. He had a slightly lower production profile at Notre Dame. But, I mean, he's a guy that had 800-plus yards, at least 7 touchdowns, so 16 total in his last 2 seasons. He actually had roughly the same numbers as the last 2 years that Brock Bowers had at Georgia. Now, Brock Bowers had the breakout freshman year where he caught 13 touchdowns and had 850. But if you just look at their last 2 years in college, they're almost identical as far as their production profile. He's a guy to use a second-round pick on. Obviously, that front office is gone, but talent wins out. And I think Mayer's going to be on the field a lot. I think we very well could see a Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid situation, and it's going to take an injury to Mayer for Brock Bowers to really break out in year one, and then the quarterback situation on top of it. But to me, it's very tough. If you have 2 useful tight ends in the NFL, it can be great for your team. For real-life football, it could be a very good pick. But for fantasy, it just caters both of their values until I see otherwise. The Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski situation where they're both top 12 tight ends is very much the exception. I mean, I can't think of another time that I've seen it, and I've been following fantasy and football for a long time. So I think it hurts them both short term at least.
Yeah, 100%. I hear what you're saying for the real life NFL value, especially. It's kind of what I was bringing up, like the 12 personnel sets. I feel like the two tight ends are going to be on the field a lot. And that's why they went after it. I don't think they're just completely discarding Michael Mayer. I just don't think they see him as the receiver, like the guy that we're going to look at that's getting fantasy value. The dude he's not athletic, really. Like he ran a 4.7 40. He's got a vertical jump in the 41st percentile, broad jump in the 68th. He's not great for acceleration. 10-yard split was in the 30th percentile. I just think that he is a better NFL player than he is a fantasy player. But I do think that Brock Bowers will be that guy that they're not just looking at like we're gonna line him up in line two tight end sets. That's it. I think they're gonna get him involved, split out wide or in the slot. Well, it's going to be a while before we see because I'm not even projecting a great 2024, but a great 2025. So not tossing out any bets yet, but next season we'll see where we land on some of these. Let's get on to Ben Sinnott and Jatavian Sanders. Those are going to be the last two tight ends we talk about today. Ben Sinnott goes to the Washington Commanders, was the only tight end taken in the second round with the 21st overall pick. Jatavian Sanders, much later. A lot of people had them as their tight end 2 pre-draft. He goes in the fourth round, first pick of the fourth round to the Carolina Panthers. We talked about their lack of receiving weapons, whereas I'm personally still excited for Jahan Dotson to have a second year or a third year breakout, a little bit of a bounce back here. I think Terry McLaurin, his skill set really suits Jaden Daniels' skill set. I think both of those can do, have a lot of success together in the passing game. And overall, I do believe in Jaden Daniels, both as a passer and just as a guy who will be able to move his offense far more than Bryce Young. So I will have Ben Sinnott firmly ahead of Jatavian Sanders. Right now, I got Sinnott going as... There he is. All right, I got him going as the 304, right behind Marshawn Lloyd and Javon Baker.
Yeah, I kind of have both of them kind of interchangeable. I think Ben Sinnott will have the better year one, but I think Jatavian Sanders is going to be that guy that maybe year 2 or year 3 starts to show more production. I just think that, they're not locked into anyone really long-term except Leggett. And I mean, I could be totally wrong. If Ben Sinnott is the better long-term tight end, then I would not be shocked by any means. But those two are kind of interchangeable, but I would probably lean a little more towards Ben Sinnott just because I think he's going to show that immediate production. And if you do want to move on from him after a year, I think he'll have that more value that you can kind of move on from him as a promising tight end. Jatavian Sanders could kind of be that guy, which, after this season, maybe you can trade for him for a fourth and get decent value. But that's just kind of my opinion. I think for both of them, it was a good landing spot where long term they definitely can evolve into somebody.
So obviously we've touched on it before, and I don't think it really matters, but I think it's Senate, not Sinnott. I could be wrong, but all the Washington media I've heard have pronounced it Senate. But is there a better spot for a guy who's been nicknamed the Senator to go play football in Washington, D.C.? Like, is this not just tailor-made for this guy to be a breakout star? Cliff Kingsbury, he got Zach Ertz at the, he's extended his career, but on the back side of his prime, and he had some very productive years in that offense. You have a young quarterback who, while he does have nice touch and a nice deep ball, maybe not the strongest arm in the world, doesn't have a great offensive line in front of him. So he is going to be – we're going to be looking for some quick passes. He might be running for his life. I hope not. So I think Eckler out of the backfield, how much ever usage he gets, and Sennett, I think are going to see a lot of those dump off passes. To me, the draft capital matters, and he's 2 full rounds in front of Sanders. And I am hopeful, obviously, as a Washington fan, that Jane Daniels is going to have a better rookie year and a better career as a whole than Bryce Young. No offense to all our Panther fans listening, but I just honestly, I think his profile fits that of one of those later, day 2 tight ends who just, I'm not going to say star. I don't want to put that on him, but I think he could be a very productive tight end, and he's very versatile. He could be playing some H-back, catching some balls out of the backfield as well, not just lining up at tight end. So, yeah, maybe Ertz is going to be – there's not a fullback on the roster. So, filling that role, he's a great blocker. He's a guy who's going to get on the field early. And in this offense, with that offensive coordinator, with a young quarterback, yeah, I mean, I'm buying Sennett. He's got the best nickname of anybody that could come to DC to play football. And ultimately, I am a homer, but I believe in your boy, Mason. I believe in Adam Peters. I believe in his talent evaluation. And I think this is a guy who he had targeted. He had made the statement that, they were lucky to get Kittle when they did, and they wouldn't have waited as long, in the future. And he's looking for Sennett to be his George Kittle.
Well,
No,
when
I
you
do
said
like.
my boy, when you said my boy, I thought you were gonna jump in and say Luke McCaffrey, which I also do think was a great pickup by you guys. I mean, I think if Dotson does evolve into the wide receiver 2 with Terry, I think Luke McCaffrey was a great pickup for you guys. Sorry,
I mean,
man,
I think
didn't
it's
mean to cut you
Luke
off.
and Sennett. Sorry?
Oh no, I was just saying you guys are good. Yeah,
Oh.
I agree with most of your takes here. I do think the only thing I have flipped is Mason's take on like redraft versus dynasty value here. I do think that Jatavian has all of the opportunity in year 1 just because it's Deontay, Leggett, and Thielen. I think that maybe if Dave Canales comes over and is utilizing the tight end a little bit more, we saw some action from K-Dot in the last 2 years. I think that Jatavian Sanders has the athletic ability to turn those few opportunities into big gains, and that could, how tight end goes. You don't have to have a ton of great games in order to be a tight end 12 to 18. You just need those couple of big plays, high touchdown games. I do think that Sanat is overall the better dynasty tight end to roster here, and the guy that I could see, just gaining value year after year for the next 2 or 3 years, especially as McLaurin heads out. And if Dotson doesn't do enough to prove his first round value and that 5th-year extension, he could be gone in 2 years too. So both of those guys are gone. Who else is there? It's Sinnott, you said?
Yeah, Sennett.
Ben Sinnott. Okay, yeah, I had only honestly really heard the pronunciation through the footballers, and I know that Mike Wright's pushing that Senator trademark there for the nickname. So I should have listened to the broadcast a little bit more. But yeah, I do like Sinnott's talent overall. I think he's athletic enough to be, like you were saying, that like late round sleeper tight end that not a lot of people are going to take too early despite the draft capital, especially in startups. Lee, Mason, we're about to start a dynasty league here, get a startup draft going. I
Let's
am
go.
curious. I won't ask because, this is top intel here, top information. Can't crack the code. But I am curious to see where Sinnott goes and which of the 3 or 4 of us takes him first.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm looking to get that Jaden Daniels, Ben Sennett stack. So don't take him from me, please.
That's why you won't be in the loop for years.
I was not expecting it to end. so please don't take him in front of me. I would really hate that.
Please.
Please don't do that. That'd be a bummer. What were you saying, Mason?
I was just saying that's why Lee won't win for years.
Hey.
Love
Hey,
it. More Mac talk to come from this league. I can expect a lot more of that throughout the season. We will be back again next week, coming at you with a fresh topic. We don't even know what we're going to be talking about next.
Could be anything.
It's not going to be rookies for once. We're going to have something new. A lot of fresh content coming now that we are post-draft season. Looking forward to it. We're going to be doing some write-ups too.
It
Make
could
sure
be
you
about
check it out.
Kadarius Toney. It could be about Patrick Mahomes.
Hey,
Mason Beck, author of Kadarius Toney, wide receiver 1. No, check us out though on Stadium Rant. We got a lot of great articles coming your way. We're going to be writing up profiles about the top 50 players at each position at least, and up to 100 at wide receiver. Let's get it, boys. We're coming into the thick of it. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you back next week.
Please
Appreciate